The lip readers are about to have a field day, and for good reason. Madison Square Garden witnessed more than just the usual drama of playoff basketball. It became the stage for a boiling pot of emotions to overflow, captured live, unfiltered, and now frozen in the minds of those who watched it unfold. In what was supposed to be a night of glory, a potential statement win to ignite the Eastern Conference Finals, things instead unraveled spectacularly for the New York Knicks. And right at the center of that implosion stood two unlikely figures: Karl-Anthony Towns and OG Anunoby. It was Wednesday night, Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals, and the Knicks had the upper hand, or so it seemed. Fans had packed the Garden with hope in their hearts and blue and orange in their veins. They believed this was the year. The energy was electric, the noise deafening, a symphony of cheers and chants echoing off the rafters. For most of the night, New York had Indiana on the ropes. But basketball, as always, is a cruel mistress. Just when victory seemed a foregone conclusion, the cracks began to show, and those cracks split open on national television. With just 34 seconds left in regulation, the Knicks still held a 5-point lead, 123 to 118. The crowd was still roaring, though perhaps with just a touch more nervousness than before. But the moment that really turned heads, the moment that will be dissected on sports talk shows and debated in barbershops and boardrooms across New York, wasn't even a basket. It was a confrontation. A very visible, very tense exchange between OG Anunoby and Karl-Anthony Towns right there on the Knicks bench. Tensions flared not just in the stands or on the scoreboard, but among the players themselves. Anunoby, wearing his frustration like a second jersey, approached Towns, who was seated on the bench. It wasn't just a passing comment or an encouraging pat on the back. No, this was different. This was heated. Anunoby got in close, his body, language aggressive but controlled, like a man trying desperately to hold himself back from saying too much, or perhaps not enough. The TNT cameras captured every second of the encounter, and though the microphones couldn't catch the words, the expressions and gestures said it all. Towns, caught in a moment of either exhaustion or disbelief, barely looked up at first. But as Anunoby's voice rose, the tension thickening with each syllable, Towns responded. Words were volleyed, fast and sharp. The two men didn't stand, but their exchange crackled with energy, as if the very air between them could catch fire at any second. These weren't strangers or mere acquaintances. These were teammates, supposed brothers in arms, and here they were, unraveling right when unity was most needed. Jalen Brunson, seated next to Anunoby and ever the steady presence, quickly stepped in. The Knicks' de facto captain didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His actions spoke volumes. A light tap on Anunoby's leg, a gentle but firm pull, an attempt to defuse, to de-escalate, to remind his teammate of the moment they were in. But even Brunson's intervention wasn't enough to fully quell the storm. Moments later, Brunson stood, walking away as if to signal both his disapproval and perhaps his own boiling frustrations. The altercation didn't seem to come from nowhere. Moments earlier, Aaron Nesmith of the Pacers had lit the Garden on fire, not as a Knicks savior but as their executioner. His three-point shooting barrage in the closing minutes of regulation flipped the entire script. Fans who had been on their feet for much of the night were now stunned into silence. You could hear the sighs, the gasps, the disbelief. It was happening. Again, the dreaded playoff collapse. And the Knicks, yet again, were caught in its unforgiving grip. Nesmith hit shot after shot with the kind of confidence that tears the heart out of a fan base. The fifth of his 6 three-pointers came with such cold precision that you could feel the air leave the building. Every flick of his wrist felt like a dagger, each one drawing more blood than the last. It wasn't just the shots that hurt, it was the timing. The Knicks weren't just losing points. They were losing control, momentum, confidence, composure. That's when the emotional dam burst. Anunoby, likely feeling that familiar playoff panic creep in, the realization that everything they'd worked for was slipping away in seconds, couldn't keep it in. And Towns, already having endured more than his fair share of scrutiny in recent months, became the target of that frustration. Whether it was about defensive rotations, missed assignments, effort levels, or just the raw emotion of the moment, we may never know. but the optics were disastrous. By the time the final buzzer rang to end regulation, the Garden was no longer a cathedral of celebration, but a tomb of stunned silence. Overtime came, and with it, more pain. Indiana rode that wave of momentum all the way to a 138-135 victory, stealing Game 1 and punching the air out of what had been a hopeful start for New York. The shell shock was real. Fans didn't boo. They didn't even scream. Many just stood there, mouths slightly open, hands on their heads, as if waiting to wake up from a terrible dream. After the game, the press wanted answers, and Josh Hart was one of the few to offer them. His voice, low and reflective, didn't need to be loud. "We didn't close the game out," he said, disappointment dripping from every syllable. "I feel like our intensity dropped. We started playing slower, playing more into their hands." That last part stung. The idea that the Knicks, with a win in their grasp, essentially handed control to the Pacers, not with bad luck, not with officiating errors, but with their own choices. The intensity dropped, the pace slowed, the belief slipped away, and in that void, Indiana feasted. The numbers tell an even bleaker story. According to ESPN, the Knicks became the first team since 1998 to blow a 9-point lead in the final minute of a playoff game. That's not just a bad night, that's historical futility. A new chapter in the team's tortured postseason lore, and with it, a million questions. What happened on that bench? Will Towns and Anunoby find common ground again before Game 2? Can Brunson, who has carried this team through so many battles, pull his squad back from the edge? And what of Coach Thibodeau, known for his defense-first mentality? How does a team built on grit and discipline allow 23 points in the final? 3 minutes? These aren't just questions for the next post-game presser. These are existential queries for a franchise that has fought so hard to build a new identity, one rooted in toughness, togetherness, and relentless effort. And now, after just one game, that identity is under siege, not just from a red-hot opponent, but from within. It's one thing to lose. It's another to implode on live television, to show your cracks not just in the box score, but in your chemistry. The Knicks, for all their progress in recent seasons, now face a different kind of challenge, a spiritual one. Can they hold it together? Can they rally not just physically, but emotionally? Can they silence the noise and refocus? Game 2 looms large, not just in the series, but in the trajectory of this team's future. Towns and Anunoby must put aside whatever resentment brewed on that bench. They must look at the bigger picture. A chance at the NBA Finals, something the Knicks haven't touched since the days of Ewing and Starks. The margin for error is gone. Every possession matters now. Every second is a war. For fans, the sight of internal drama is gut-wrenching. They've seen it too many times. Hope turned to heartbreak, promise turned to pain. But perhaps, just perhaps, this moment of chaos can spark a transformation. Maybe this is the fire that forges something stronger. Maybe the embarrassment of that collapse becomes the foundation of a fierce response. That's the story fans now crave, not one of defeat, but of redemption. Still, as the clock ticked down and Indiana celebrated their improbable win, the image that lingered wasn't Nesmith's final shot or the scoreboard blinking 138-135. It was that moment on the bench, Anunoby standing over Towns, words exchanged like punches, Brunson stepping in, all three men visibly breaking under the weight of what was slipping away. Those few seconds, immortalized in grainy replays and Twitter memes, say more than any stat sheet ever could. They reveal the truth of competition, that success demands more than talent. It demands unity, trust, and resilience in the face of failure.